What is going on, my home studio engineers? Thank you so much for checking out the Home Recording Network. And if you're watching this video, you might be just like me from 15 years ago, trying to figure out how to get your home recordings to the level of the bands and artists that you listen to. Your mixes might sound muddy, unclear, and even lifeless when compared to other music out there. And you might be wondering, is it even possible to get professional mixes from a laptop using only basic plugins? Well, yes, it certainly is, and even better, people are accomplishing just that every day. Today, I want to make your life a little bit easier by giving you 7 tips that are gonna push your mixes to a whole nother level so that you can start matching the quality of the bands and artists you listen to. But first, if this video helps you out at all, don't forget to like and subscribe so that I can continue making content and reach more home studio engineers like you that need help. Now, let's move on to my first piece of advice for you. And this first tip is something that took me a while to learn, but it's something that can be the difference between an amateur and a pro mix. My first tip is to not hide behind reverb. If your mixes are coming out muddy or unclear, too much reverb might be the culprit. If you're doing your job correctly, your track should already sound great with no reverb added. And adding some verb to a vocal or another track should just be icing on the cake. If you listen to mainstream music, you will notice that they do not overuse reverb. So it makes sense that overloading our mixes with a ton of reverb will instantly make our songs sound like amateur home recordings. Let me hop into Logic real quick and show you an example. All right, so we are in a mix that I'm currently working on, and let's just listen to the chorus vocals and specifically the reverb on the chorus vocal. So here's the chorus. If it always only looking forward, you might not see just where you've been. If you're always passing on the shoulder, you're only living for the end. Now, let's just listen to the vocals with the reverb. You're going to notice there's not a ton of reverb on the vocals. If you're always only looking forward, you might not see just where you've been. Right, there's some reverb on there, but there's also some delay, creating some ambience. It's not all the reverb. So if we play the chorus and then I occasionally mute the Vox Hall, which is the reverb I have on this, you're going to notice that this song really doesn't lose that much. It sounds great even without the reverb. If you're always only looking forward, you might not see just where you've been. If you're always passing on the shoulder, you're only living for the end. Again, you probably couldn't tell even when I muted the reverb because the reverb's not supposed to be the most important thing in the song. And I see people just trying to make their tracks sound good with adding a lot of reverb on there because the track doesn't sound good. Well, no, you should actually get the track to sound awesome with EQ and compression and your other techniques. And then just kind of throw a little bit of reverb on there at the end to spice it up and give it a little bit of extra ambience. If we add a ton of reverb into our mixes, it's just gonna make the mix sound unclear. And again, make it sound amateur. People can tell when you're trying to hide something with reverb, it sticks out. But in the future, I plan on making a video about how to get, vocal ambience without reverb. Maybe just adding a touch of it, but there are other techniques that we can use to get that ambience from our vocal tracks and other tracks. All right, let's move on to the next tip. Now, my second tip for you guys is to EQ your tracks in mono. Why would we do this? Because listening to our tracks in stereo with some tracks panned to the side, some up the middle, gives us a false sense of separation. Your mixes might sound great on your studio monitors or headphones. You might be able to hear every track clearly, but when you take it to another listening environment, your mix becomes unclear and muddy. EQing in mono forces all of our tracks to sit right on top of each other so that we can hear when the frequencies in our tracks are fighting. Now, I am not telling you to mix your songs in mono because that would be unproductive, as of course most of our listeners are going to be listening to our mixes in stereo. But EQing your tracks in mono is a sure way to gain clarity in your songs. Now, how do you go about doing this? Well, if your DAW doesn't have a plugin that will switch your mix into mono, you can download the free BX Solo from Plugin Alliance, throw it on your final output, and just hit the mono button. For me, I use the Personas Sound Station, and that allows me to instantly change my mix to mono with the press of a button. Now, my third tip is very simple, but it's also very important, and you may have heard me talk about this before. High pass all of your tracks. If you're working with live instruments, everything you record is going to have unneeded frequencies that are going to muddy up the low end of your mixes. And while listening to your tracks in solo, you might think that these low end frequencies are just too quiet to even make an impact. But when we add all this low end energy up across all our tracks, this in fact does make a huge impact on our mixes. So my advice to you is to cut all that junk out of your tracks so that you can have a tighter low end in your songs. Here are all my typical roll-off areas for instruments, and these frequencies are noted in my mix guide, which you can grab for free in the description of this video. My next tip goes along with tip 3, and it is to notch out additional low-end mud. Right above your high-pass filter, there will usually be some additional low-end buildup. I find that if you search around for these muddy frequencies and just pull them down by a few dB on all your tracks, this will have an immediate impact on the clarity of your mix. Again, here are some of the typical frequencies that I'm notching out. And again, these are all available in my free mix guide that can be downloaded in the description of this video. Now, tip 4 is to emulate saturation on your tracks. Now, most of us working out of our home don't have the budget for outboard gear and mixing consoles. And because of this, our mixes are lacking that color that we get from tracking and mixing through this unaffordable gear. And when we stack our songs up against other music out there, our mixes just sound weaker and almost like they are missing something. Now, thankfully, we have plenty of plugins that can emulate this sound nowadays that are very affordable. And if you don't have a budget, make sure you grab the free saturation knob from Softtube and try dialing in some subtle saturation across some of your tracks so that you can add some of this color to your digital mixes. Now, it is no secret that compression plays a huge role in music production, but I find that home studio engineers shy away from this and are just frankly not using enough of it. So my 5th tip is to use heavy compression in your mixes. Don't be afraid to drive hard into your compressors and really control your tracks. Pin the needle if you have to and see what it sounds like, and dial the threshold back to your liking. The human ear loves dynamic consistency, so simply put, we need to make sure we achieve it across all of our tracks. And don't forget, when we watch the big guys compress tracks, it may not look like they're using a ton of compression, but we have to remember that these tracks have already been heavily compressed in the recording process. Our tracks, on the other hand, have not been, so we need to put in a little extra work in the mixing stage. And if you need more help on this subject, make sure you check out some of my other videos on compression. My last tip is to EQ aggressively. Just like compression, we really need to push the limits of our equalizers in order to get our mixes to cut and match up to other music that's out there. My advice to you is to learn your typical boost and cut frequency areas for your instruments, which again are in my mix guide, and just go bigger with your EQ moves. Early on, I sent one of my mixes to Ryan Hewitt, and the mix critique that I got back was to just keep doing everything I was doing except boost more on my EQs. And at this time, I thought I already was going pretty big with my boost, but his advice was to just keep going bigger. Again, if we watch some of the big time engineers mix, it may not look like they're EQing their tracks super aggressively, but we have to remember that these tracks that they're mixing have already been EQ'd during the recording stage. And our tracks, of course, have not been, so we need to go big in the mixing stage. To see this in action, make sure you sign up for my free weekly mix training in the description so that you can start mixing at a higher level. Well, I hope this advice helped you out. Go start putting this stuff into action and feel free to reach out with any questions. Happy mixing, guys. Hey guys, if you like this video, be sure to download your free Ultimate Home Studio Mix Guide with your go-to EQ and compression settings for all your tracks. And also be sure to register for my free online mix training that I hold a couple times a week so that you can learn how to make radio quality music from your home without breaking the bank.